You hungry? You hungry, baby? Hello, friends. How are we doing with the Cozy November Writing Challenge? I thought that I would check in today. I think when I post this, it'll be the 10th. I'm filming it on the 9th and I'll post it on the 10th. I think that's where we're at in the month. So we're a third of the way through. How are y'all doing on your goals? Personally, I'm actually doing pretty well. I'd hope to get 10,000 words written, and I think I'm at about like 7,000, but it's only actually the 9th, so I'm hoping that by the time that this video actually goes live, I will have caught up to where I wanted to be. Especially because the first third of the month has been terrible for the most part. It's been very hot, and I hate hot weather. It feels like we're living in the apocalypse to me right now. Everything is very warm and very dry. It feels like a tinderbox, and it doesn't feel like November whatsoever. I know that pretty much the whole East Coast, at least, has been dealing with this. And, if you like warm weather, maybe you're happy about it. To me, it feels kind of like unpleasant and a little terrifying. But it finally turned cooler today, so that has improved my mood immensely. As you know, autumn is my favorite season. Autumn and even winter here in North Carolina, at least, because the winters here are generally very mild and nice. And if you give me a 50-degree day, I'm a happy girl. And a 30-degree night with a ton of blankets. So, I don't know. I don't like it. And I've said this in other videos. It just kind of feels like fall doesn't exist this year. 6 weeks since the hurricane, I think. Yeah, 6 weeks since the hurricane about. And now I think we're all in Western North Carolina getting that sense that the initial rush of like helping each other, resolving crises, all of that is over for pretty much everybody. People have gotten their like supply chains of food, and there's FEMA housing, and pretty much everybody has some kind of water and power restored, all that. But the city of Asheville still does not have potable water, like the whole town, which means that the whole city is just shut down in tourist season. And if you go there, like a lot of the restaurants are closed, there's no tourists, there's just nothing going on. And I know here in Marshall, the initial grief and shock has evolved into a different kind of feeling now. Like when I go into town, which I haven't seen town very much, but it's kind of hitting you that it's going to take a while to rebuild anything, for anything to get back to normalcy, and the rest of the world has moved on, as they should, kind of. I mean, I hope that you'll remember us here in Western North Carolina, but it's not like we can think about every place and every tragedy all the time. It's just not possible. So we're at that stage where people aren't really thinking about us anymore, and we just kind of have to figure out how to rebuild this whole region from here, and how to support each other and recover. And it's a bit glum, I'm gonna be honest. But I have been totally holding myself up, writing away all of my plans for autumn to be at Biltmore looking at fall leaves or go on little adventures. They're just all canceled, so I might as well just write, and that's what I've been doing. So my plan for the Cozy November Writing Challenge personally was to finish the Una and Vari book. Still doesn't have a title. And how much have I gotten done of the Una and Vari book? Not much. Not much at all. I have just kind of had to accept the fact that I'm writing 3 projects at a time. There's the Una Vari book, the Potion Dealers, and the sequel to The Broken Queen. I thought as the month kicked off, I had at least narrowed it down to 2, and I was not touching the Broken Queen sequel because I realized that it's the most ambitious. I've been the most kind of stuck in it of the 3 projects, and I'm so much closer to being done on the other 2 that it just makes sense not to work on that one. So guess which one I've been working on this month? That's right, I've been working on the sequel to The Broken Queen, the one that I said that I wasn't going to work on. All of a sudden, I just had an inspiration that I wanted to work on it, which I haven't really had this whole time. And I sat down and the words just started flowing out as if I had never been stuck on it in my life. So apparently this is happening. I'm going to juggle 3 projects at a time because I've put down words on all 3 of them in the last 2 weeks. Now, it's a conversation topic among writers, working on just one project at a time versus working on multiple projects at a time. And normally, I am not a many projects at a time girl. I like to have one primary project that I always prioritize. And if I sit down to write and I'm really stuck in that one, it is just not working. Let me actually drink a little of this. Then I think it's okay, or like a good thing, to have a second project that you can kind of like go work on a little to clear your head for the first project, but to still always keep like one project at a time being the primary project. And then when that one's done, hopefully the project that you've been poking at in the background is now ready to flower into the primary project. But this time, all 3 of these books keep juggling between which one wants to attract my attention the most. And I can't seem to stop these books from doing this to me. So all right, I succumb. Would someone like to come in here? Come on, Peru. Yeah, we don't need that. Cat battlers. So here's where I stand with these 3 books. The Una and Vari book, I'm a little over 40,000 words deep into that one. I expect it to be about 80,000 words, so I'm probably about halfway through. This is a book where I really like the characters. The characters are all flowing well, and I feel like I know who they all are. The part that's not working so well is the plot. It feels a little disjointed, and I keep like trying new angles to try to fix that about it. My current thinking is that maybe this book does not want to have so much of like a romance structure as maybe it wants to be a little more episodic, more of like a small town kind of book. A good example, besides the Ella Montgomery books that I've been rereading, because those are making me think of kind of a structure. They tend to have a little more episodic chapters, but a better example is probably Legends and Lattes. I've even compared this book to Legends and Lattes, but with the first movie theater in Fantasyland. Maybe I need to lean into that a little more. Legends and Lattes has a structure kind of where it's about building up the first like coffee house in Fantasyland, and a lot of the chapters have to deal with just like little interactions with different patrons in the coffee house, and there's like a cute little background romance, but it doesn't really have like a romance structure. I usually write books with a romance structure because it's a very easy structure to work with and then to work in all the other parts around it. So even when I write something that feels more epic fantasy, I often start with the idea of a romance structure just because I'm not always great at plotting. So that has always helped me like kick off the plot. But I am kind of thinking with this book that hinging it on the romance isn't working as well. And then I might need to think of it more as an ensemble cast. because that would sort of change the way that I'm approaching like the chapter structure. I wouldn't feel as much of a need for the chapters to really push the romantic interaction, but to just let that evolve like subtly in the background and focus more on the friendships and the collaboration of creating this movie theater. So I'm thinking about that. The only kind of problem with that is that there's a fairly long beginning section where Una is rescuing Vari, and you learn what Vari's been doing, why he never came home after the war. And that is a little off track from the like more Legends and Lattes, like small town vibe. So I'm trying to think what I want to do with that. Do I want to just kind of chop that down so that it doesn't take up as much of the book, or does it work okay? And do I just need to like shift the vibe of it a little bit? So that's that one. Then The Potion Dealers is a rewrite of a book that I've already written twice. Actually, I've written it like 1,000 times. But as I talked about in one of my other videos, I've written many, many, many books since I wrote the last incarnation of this book, and I've learned a lot. My writing style is, or my writing approach has changed a fair amount, so I think that it's a good time to get back to it. And this is a book where I pretty much have the characters and the plot. I have everything. The trouble with it is really just questioning how much I want to change it from the original. Because you can get a lot in your head about stuff like that. When I went back and reread the last version of it, which I published as Fortune's Curse back in 2016, what struck me about it at the time is that it is just super fast-paced. It's supposed to be in my head like this wonderful love story that then evolves into another like friends group, kind of like the Una Vari book. So the main thing that I definitely wanted to change is to make it pace slower, not just rush through the plot points at like this breakneck pace, but to really take time to indulge in the characters and the plots, and you let the romance take place over a longer period of time, stuff like that. So the question in my mind now is, what do I expand upon and how do I expand it? Because I don't want it to be boring, but I do want it to feel a little more epic than it did originally. Hopefully I'm not getting chocolate on my mouth. I keep drinking hot cocoa in between talking. And then we have the Broken Queen sequel, and that one is it's a very ambitious project. I can easily see it being longer than the Broken Queen, which was already 125,000 words. I could see this one clocking in at like 140,000 words. So it is a doozy of a project, and I could split it up into 2 books, but I just don't think that it quite works as 2 books. I think it works better as one longer book, which doesn't really do my finances any favors. Like, it makes more sense to break a book up into 2 books whenever possible, because generally people will pay the same amount for a shorter book, or at least slightly less. But if you just have like one absurdly long book, you can't like charge double, right? Maybe you could, but I think that it might be a bit of a turnoff. You would definitely be kind of going rogue as far as indie publishing prices go. So it's not great that's going to be so long, but it is what it is. I'm not worrying about it at this point. And the Broken Queen sequel is, I've talked before, this is the first story in my fantasy world that I'm planning to tell. It's what sets the stakes and the ultimate goals for every character that follows in the next century of different stories that I'm planning to tell, which makes it very intimidating. I want to make sure that I tell it the way it is in my head, but it's complicated, and I don't actually, I haven't actually spent as much time writing about this part of the world or this time in history as much as some other places and times. So it's caused me a lot of difficulty, but I think it's just one of those books that needs a lot of time to percolate in the mind. And since I haven't really worked on it for months, and all of a sudden it just is working, And I can't fully explain why a book suddenly works when it hasn't been for a while, but I will say it has a lot of female rage in it, which I'm not really. I am more of a romantic. I'm not actually very rage-filled, which is another reason it might be hard to write, but right now that vibe is kind of working for me.
We've made sure that there's going to be only women this weekend. Yeah! Even for a moment, just a glimmer of a female utopia.
Sounds like heaven on earth.
Yeah. See you later. All right, here we go.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
You guys ready to have a good time?
We're going to call the police in a minute.
It's weird when you write political fantasy because you will inevitably, as you're writing it, especially if you're writing it over a period of years, there will be certain things that might happen that parallel things that you had planned for a long time. And that we're probably in the moment that most reflects some of the events that I had planned out a long time ago, or at least like it feels like a story I would have come up with just now to comment on what's going on in the world in the last several years, but it's not. I came up with it a long time ago, and that makes it a little weird sometimes to write because I don't want to start thinking of like, oh, this character is like a metaphor for this person, or this event is a metaphor for this real thing that happened. I don't want to change anything because inevitably I'll be working on this story for a long time and different things are going to happen. And I want to make sure that these characters are themselves and this society is itself, and that it doesn't feel too much like a commentary on our own world, which it's interesting to draw those parallels organically, but when I'm writing, I want to block all that out and not let it affect what I'm doing. So there's that kind of weird balance that there's certain emotions that maybe I can draw on to write it, but I don't necessarily want it to reflect what's going on in the world, nor do I want to change things so that they don't reflect. So those are the 3 projects that I've been working on during the Cozy November Writing Challenge, which means that I'm not even sure what goal to give myself anymore. I guess I'm still just trying for 30,000 words of like anything. It's a little frustrating because now I'm like halfway through 2 books and like a little bit of the way through this really long Broken Queen sequel. And I was really hoping that I would be able to get a second book out this year. But if I'm going to get like halfway through 3 different books, then it looks more likely that next year I'm just going to have a lot of releases, and that this year I still might not make it to have any because, you know, I should be finishing something up and worrying about a cover and all that pretty soon if I was going to get something out in time for the end of the year. So I don't think it's happening, but that's just the way it's going to have to be, I think, for now. I knew this year was going to be like a big shift as I started focusing more on the YouTube channel and writing about my fantasy world. And, you know, I haven't spent much time in this world in a very long time. So it's taken me a little while to get back into the groove. But the one thing that's clear is that I'm in the groove. Even if I'm a little too in the groove, writing 3 different projects, it would be better if I could just find one groove and not be in 3 different grooves at once. So from like a practical self-publishing marketing perspective, I would not recommend that anybody work on 3 books at a time. But sometimes when it comes to creative stuff, especially if you have a little financial cushion to do it, I do think that it can be a good thing to let your muse do its thing rather than trying to tell it what to do, as I've been doing for so long. I swear, I feel like my life is just so boring right now. I mean, writing isn't really boring, but at least it's not boring in my head. But even I'll admit, I probably could use a little external stimulation right now, and I'm just not even sure what it should be. But I'm going to be going to my local fantasy writing group on Monday, so at least that'll be like the most outing I've had in 6 weeks. That'll be my first time actually being in Asheville in 6 weeks. So I hope you are all doing well. I would love to know how your writing projects are going if you decided to join me in the Cozy November Writing Challenge. I am cheering you on. Sorry for these very rambly videos right now, but I warned you November was going to be like me being a little bit of a mess. I am working on one that's a little more structured that I think is going to be a pretty fun topic to discuss for my next one, but it's not quite yet. So thank you so much for being here. If you're new here, I'm sorry for just rambling, but if you enjoyed it, you might enjoy some of my other videos even more. So make sure to click the like and subscribe, and if you want more from me, join my Patreon or my Substack. Same content on both, and they both have a free tier or a $5 tier that gets you access to my Discord and other bonuses. So I'm going to finish my hot cocoa that is now starting to get cold, and then I'm going to write all evening. Have a good evening. Bye. Extra special thank you to my Patreons this month. I just hit 100 paid Patreons and Substack members. Thank you guys so much. You make this whole channel possible.